Diving into the Indian culture is a stimulation to all senses. The people we see, the food we eat, the spices we smell, and the culture we touch. We are so used to the environment that surrounded us while we developed those senses that emerging into different conditions feels like a whole new dimension for our sensitivity. Pollution is easily noticeable, and you can feel the dirt infiltrating your lungs, and your eyes are not able to tell the difference between a clean sky and a cloudy day. The major sources of pollution are biomass burning, vehicle emission, and traffic congestion. The country also has a massive garbage problem, the product of rapid economic growth, overcrowding, poor urban planning, and political dysfunction. Littering is also a naturalized practice. A society that has been used to throwing away biodegradable material for millennia has not yet reconciled itself to the plastics and other synthetic products of India's industrial revolution. On the ground, sewage is also a problem. Walking along the alleys, ponds of dirty water exist everywhere, accompanied by piles of trash. By the river Ganges, trash flows from the streets to pool next to or in the water. In many parts of India, caked and dried cow dung is used as fuel. Dung is also collected and burned to produce biogas, to generate electricity and heat. The gas is rich in methane and is used in rural areas of India and elsewhere to provide a renewable and stable source of energy. The size of India's population also plays a key role in their environment. Citizens find environmentally friendly ways of transport, not out of moral obligation, but out of necessity. 21% of the population ride scooters or mopeds, and 42% ride bicycles. Given that India is already an extremely polluted country, the urbanization of all parts of it would be disastrous to the environment. In all, India is far from being considered environmentally sustainable. This is not the case because the people are ignorant or neglectful. It is simply because most of the populace does not have the means to put the environment before themselves. Only a radical change in economy will lead to a change in the environment.
When we arrived in New Delhi, there were not a lack of things to see when walking down the streets. The smells were overpowering, a different scent every step you took. It was never quiet, horns sounded constantly, and we were never in our own space. We saw men and women everywhere, but one thing we rarely saw was a woman participating in larger life beyond the home. Men work in the stores, drive the cars, tuk-tuks, and rickshaws. They participate in religious ceremonies, serve food at restaurants, and enjoy leisure time. Despite this full life the men live, all we saw women doing was carrying a child down the street or begging. There were so many aspects of outside life that women seemed to be excluded from. As we moved into the countryside, the gender dynamic changed. In the rural villages, women's roles were quite different. They worked in the fields and played a larger role in public life. These women were much more accessible than the women in the large cities. Recalling our experiences, it seems as though women in India are the building blocks of society and keep it running, while men are the facade and maintain the visible parts of a working order. We were only in India for 16 days, and understanding the gender roles, subtle nuances, and true levels of oppression are not possible in such a short time, if at all for a Westerner. The Indian culture is so old and complex, it is hard to decipher what is repression and what is part of a larger culture. Things that seem oppressive to us as Westerners, like wearing a veil or being in charge of the home, might often be freeing for an Indian woman and very much her own choice. As the global community's values infiltrates with its economy, India's deep religious culture will surely change and secularize. What this means for women, we can only guess.
Throughout history, India has managed to maintain its exceptional ancient traditions in spite of global modernization and Western ideals. This was conceptually evident as large cities like New Delhi house numbers like 9.87 million residents. Western culture has quickly infiltrated into these areas, but not completely. Developing cities are filled with aspects of traditional India. Within rural India, you can see traces of Western expansionism anywhere you go. Amongst the skyscrapers are ancient mosques and Hindu temples. Draped between towering corporate buildings and iconic ancient structures are electrical wires. On the contrary, India's countryside is partially untouched but has visible traces of industrialism. Amongst the farms and villages that have remained the same for generations, they now mass-produce name-brand products. At this village was a water wheel that produced fresh groundwater to the entire village. Women sat near and washed clothes as a man guided the bull powering the wheel. This is a sustainable way to filter the water and has been used for centuries. Practices like this reflect the traditional aspects of Indian society.
Spirituality are ever present from the time one arrives in India. In the New Delhi airport, huge golden sculptures of hand gestures called mudras welcome you into what is otherwise a modern transportation hub. On our first day, we visited a small Sikh temple in the heart of Old Delhi. People sat quietly about as several men were playing instruments and singing prayers. We also visited a Sufi temple, Hazrat Nizamuddin Dargah, where only the men were allowed to enter the central temple and the women were relegated to the adjoining raised courtyard as the men knelt in prayer. We also got the amazing opportunity to travel to the Jama Masjid, a long-standing mosque in the heart of Old Delhi. Once again, we were required to take off our shoes and dress conservatively, as it was a place of worship. The people were very welcoming and accepting of us, and despite our various religious beliefs, we were invited by the locals to join them in namaz. Varanasi is considered the Hindus' holiest city and is one of the oldest continually inhabited cities in the world. We happened to visit during this year's Shiravati, a celebration of Shiva, the greatest of gods. We witnessed everything from large celebrations on Ganges River's edge to sadhus doing hatha yoga on the ghats to people bathing ritually in the river and bodies being burnt on certain ghats. Religion is the glue that holds India together. It is present throughout the whole country and is the pillar of hope that keeps the nation moving forward despite its issues of poverty and inequality. Because religion encompasses all people from all walks of life. The importance of religion can be seen in the multiple temples and many temples throughout the city. Although religion is often painted by politics as a divider between Muslims and Hindus, there is no such evidence when one walks down the streets. In fact, India is one of the most religiously diverse countries, as it consists of more than 100 religions, some monotheistic and others polytheistic. Yet, they all live side by side in harmony. Not only is religion in India a spiritual marvel, but is also a multi-sensory experience. You feel it, you smell it, you hear it, you see it, you taste it. This is India.